Roger Kincaid and Rob Breckenridge.
All right, let's start up in Edmonton, where I guess an in-camera meeting at the legislature of all parties determined that September 2015, that despite everything you're reading in the newspapers, like just as an example, the front page of the Globe and Mail today, layoffs coming to TransCanada, just another company that's affected by the price of oil. In this meeting in Edmonton, amongst politicians from various parties, they determined that there are certain people who should be getting raises. And those people are provincial officials, people like the privacy commissioner, the child and youth advocate, those types. Now, good, hardworking people who probably maybe should get a raise at some point in time. But now, come on.
Well, these are retroactive to April of this year. Mm-hmm. By the way, the same committee also approved some money for its members to attend a conference in Boston. I'd love to go to a conference in Boston. So anyway, the perception here that this committee is doling out money and giving people pay raises and nice cozy trips at a time when, Albertans are facing a lot of economic uncertainty, people are facing layoffs and pay cuts. And that's the reality in the real world. So once again, it seems that we have a government that's disconnected from that real world. That's what's so frustrating about this story, is that we've been here before. We've seen this story many times before, but under a new government, we supposedly closed the book on all of that. Maybe not.
Yeah, let's get to our first guest and get a little bit more context for what's going on up there at the Ledge. Jason NIXON is a member of the Legislative Assembly for Rimbey, Rocky Mountain House Sundre, Wild Roser. Jason, how are you?
Very good. How about you?
Good. So tell us what happened.
Well, we were in committee yesterday in the Legislative Office Committee. In about the middle of the committee, we were brought in camera and given a presentation on raises that would total 7.25% for all the senior independent officers of the legislature. And then we did actually go out of in camera to debate that motion, so it was a public meeting by that point. But long story short, the opposition MLAs were quite appalled when they saw that 7.25% number. Speaking as the MLA for Rimbey, Rocky Mountain House Sundre, I'm having constituents laid off on a daily basis. Business is struggling in my riding, and we felt there was no way that we could in good conscience vote for those raises, and we articulated that to our NDP colleagues, who then used their majority, of course, to vote the raises in anyway.
All right, so Roger touched on it, but perhaps you can explain in more detail to whom these raises apply.
Well, they apply to all of the senior independent officers of the legislature, so that would be the Auditor General, the Ethics Commissioner, the Privacy Commissioner, the Child and Youth Advocate. I suspect I'm missing one or two more, but those type of positions.
Okay, and why did this come forward in the first place?
We don't know. We did not know about it. At least the opposition MLAs did not know that this would be on the table in the committee meeting yesterday. So, there was a motion to go in camera, and then all of a sudden we were presented with the documentation associated with these raises.
All right. In the debate, though, did they justify the need for the raise or why they're deserved?
No, that was one of the things that I found most troubling is the Wild Rose members, including myself, articulated our concerns with it, and no NDP member spoke to us to articulate why or what the need for this was or why they felt it was justified given the economic climate. They listened to what we had to say and then just proceeded with the vote.
And these people, by the way, I mean, we should be clear about something. We're talking about adding raises onto people who are already quite well compensated.
Yeah, I think the low end of the range on this is north of $150,000, and those would be the ones considered part-time, and the high end is north of $280,000.
It's hard to have this conversation, by the way, without sounding like there's some sort of economic jealousy going on here. I don't begrudge these people their salaries. Their jobs are beyond anything that I could do, and I would argue that most of us could do. But I mean, this really just does come down to a question, Jason, about optics, or is it more about the valuing of certain public professions in our province?
Well, I certainly value all those officers, and I know the rest of my colleagues do. They do important work for our political system and for the legislature. But, at a time, again, when Albertans across the province are losing jobs, the optics of giving that level of a raise to positions that are already in those salary ranges are terrible, in my opinion, and not something I could vote for. It just seems to be an entirely inappropriate time to even bring it up.
All right, so this was approved. This was voted on by the committee. It was approved, so it would seem as though it's a done deal. But what's now happening, Jason? Because we understand it now, the committee is being called back to meet next week to revisit all of this?
Oh, yeah, that's a real interesting thing. I mean, we raised this in the committee, and the NDP did not have a lot to say about our concerns, but as we left the committee and, of course, began to communicate with the press our concerns about what took place yesterday, and the press began to carry it a fair bit yesterday, all of a sudden there seemed to be a change of heart with our NDP colleagues, and they have indicated they're going to call us all back next week to reconsider this.
Well, I guess 5 people will have to reconsider it. The rest will probably stand their ground. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think we'll be changing our minds. And, I think for us it's a little bit disappointing that, we gave every opportunity in the committee to probably be able to get out of this, in a nonpartisan way. And the fact that we had to put the pressure on with the press to get our colleagues to do the right thing is kind of alarming.
Okay, I wonder that. But, I mean, what about the leadership on this one? I mean, where is the Premier, for example, on this?
Well, I would assume that the NDP must have known that this would be tabled. I mean, they are the chair of the committee as one of their members. So that is troubling as well, that either there was no leadership to indicate which way they felt their members should go, or they thought that these raises were appropriate. It has to be one of the two.
Right. Sorry, Jason, can you tell us who the chair of the committee was?
Her name is Denise Woolard.
Yeah.
And she's one of the ones who is going to be taking one of the trips that you mentioned, Rob.
That's correct.
Right. This junket to Boston. Now, that was approved by this same committee, correct?
Yeah, and that was on the agenda, and the opposition, all 4 of the opposition members on the committee were concerned, about the appropriateness of taking a taxpayer trip to Boston.
So that would be the entire committee, like yourself included?
No, it would have been 3 members and the committee clerk. And what happens is all the committee can be put into a draw if they chose to go, and then they would draw the 3 members that would be the delegation.
So that's still set to go ahead.
That is, the opposition members refused to go in the draw. We also brought forward 2 motions, one to postpone any international trips by the committee for at least a year until we could see how the economic situation is. And then when that was voted down by the NDP majority, we brought forward another motion to at least limit the delegation to the committee clerk and chair, which was again voted down by the NDP majority.
Now, this is a conference in Boston, by the way, about ethics in government, right?
That's correct.
And then I believe then that when they arrive at the conference, there will be a sign there that says you've already missed the point.
Yes, exactly.
So Jason, I go back to my leadership question on this one. What I'm getting at is, does it seem as though there was a break from NDP leadership on this one, that maybe they made a decision that, I guess, more established or more experienced members would have advised them against, and that's why the committee's being called back?
But, it's possible. It's possible they didn't communicate with the Premier's office on it. I don't know. I will say this. The 3 Wild Rose MLAs that are on that committee, including myself, are rookies as well. We're only 4 months into our job, 4 or 5 months. And, we didn't need our leader or our staff to tell us that this was wrong. We were given the information in the meeting. So
it seemed pretty obvious. Yeah.
Very quickly, we recognized that our constituents would not like this, and it was the wrong way to go.
Well, how should this be handled? Because I don't get the sense that you're saying that these individuals should never receive a pay raise, that it should just be 0 each year for eternity. I mean, they're already well paid, but do we need a better process in place to have, some, at the very least, cost of living adjustments or whatever might be above that? Or does it still come back to the committee at the end of the day?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the committee has to make decisions given on what's going on. We did indicate in the meeting that we would be willing to discuss the 2.25% of that, which was designated as a cost of living increase. But the 5% top-up, pushed the thing into the realm of complete impossibility in our minds. So, certainly we need to make sure that our officers are paid appropriate rates for the hard work that they do. And I think the committee should be more than capable of doing that and making the right decision in the future. Unfortunately, it did not today or yesterday. Well,
by the way, Jason, just before we let you go, there was another issue that you'd raised yesterday about the new managing director of the Public Affairs Bureau, that concern maybe that the government is politicizing this position. Explain what your concerns are there.
Well, Mr. Wells, who was appointed to head up the public
Mark Wells, right?
Public Affairs Bureau. This is an individual who was recently the NDP campaign communication strategist. And there's nothing wrong with the Premier, of course, hiring political staff to be around here. We are politicians. But to put somebody that is that partisan, at the head of what is supposed to be a nonpartisan public service area is completely inappropriate in our view, and kind of ironic because, the NDP have fought against that pretty hard when the PCs did it, when the NDP was in opposition. So to us, clearly the partisanization of the PAB is going to continue, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. Jason, appreciate you making some time for us here this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. Take care.
All right, you too. Jason NIXON is the Wildrose MLA for Rimbey Rocky Mountain House Sundry. Let's take a break here. We're going to come back. We'll talk more about this, your reaction to it as well, 403-974-8255. It's Kincaid and Breckenridge on News Talk 770. All right, 974-8255. So the NDP now very quickly, it seems, reversing their position on two of these points. So it was a 2.25 cost of living increase for these individuals, plus a salary modifier of 5%, which is what got us to 7.25. It sounds like the government's going to revisit that. And it also sounds like on this whole business of this junket to Boston, it's still going to go ahead. It's some kind of conference on government ethics, but they're saying, well, maybe we'll only send one or two people.
I'd like to go to a conference in Boston between the Blue Jays and the Red Sox one time. But I digress.
That would be nice.
It would be nice. You know what? If you put your name in the lottery, I'll try and draw your ballot and we can go together. The question that I have now, though, is are these contracts with these officials, did they have these pay raises built in? Right? So are these pre-negotiated, maybe even in good times? And then the committee basically had to make the decision not whether or not they deserved a raise, but whether or not they have to honor the contract.
Well, I don't know that it was a matter of honoring a contract. Because, I mean, they're going to go back and undo this now by the sounds of it. I don't know. I don't know what's built into these contracts or what they have. I mean, if all this was a 2.25 cost of living increase, I don't think anybody would have a big problem with that. That's not unreasonable, even if you're making $250,000, which is more or less on average what a lot of these top officials earn.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be pretty. I think that right now, headlines being what they are right now, I think that people would make some pretty big bones about that.
It's just 7% seems really big.
It's just, yeah, 7. No, listen, I agree with you. The bigger the number, the worse the optics are for sure. But I think that there's probably a lot of people that in this province that would find out that, if someone's making $260,000 a year, that cost of living is not something that they should ever be complaining about.
Right. Well, yeah, but I mean, then how do we make that determination? Is
precisely.
it based on GDP growth, unemployment month to month? So I don't know, but I do get the sense, and I think the government's right to recognize it now, that given what Alberta's going through right now, all of these other factors just makes it seem that much more inappropriate.
Here's a question, though. Would you kick the can down the road a little bit? Would you have a problem with the government saying, tell you what, we can't make this right now for a bunch of reasons, some of which are political, but we will just take this number and we will carry it down to when oil's over $80 a barrel, and then we'll make it retroactive to April? Would you tolerate that? Because think of how big that number would be in 2 years, for example, right?
Well, then we keep building up.
Well, yeah, because as you mentioned off the top,
well, as you mentioned, for this year, it's just going to be minimum cost of living adjustment. That's it. Right. Come back to us in a couple of years, and maybe we'll see where we're at.
I just think that if it's like you mentioned at the start, right? This is retroactive to April. So there'd be like a great big paycheck for these people, presumably, when it went through. Yeah. If you said, hey, guys, can we put the pay raise on hold for a couple of years, and we'd still make it retroactive to April? I wonder if Albertans would be able to tolerate that.
All right. Well, we'll come back to this later on. We're certainly going to have time for your calls today. When we get back from the news at 10 o'clock, we're going to talk about Calgary Transit. Transit critic Andy Tylo's written a lot about Calgary Transit. He's been on this program before. He's going to be back with us. We'll talk about this customer commitment Calgary Transit has and what people expect Calgary Transit to be, what they expect Calgary Transit to deliver. It's Kincaid and Breckenridge on News Talk 770.